Joining me on the show today is Celeste Mergens. From a very young age, Celeste and her family were homeless while her and her siblings endured abusive upbringings from their stepfathers. Later in life, she considered suicide, reaching a point where she no longer desired to go on. But inside, a tiny spark of hope whispered to her that her future was worth living for. Over the years, she's learned that no matter the odds, no matter your circumstances or hardships, no one can define you but you. Today, she is the founder of Days for Girls International, a global award winning organization that has helped reach more than 3 million women and children in 145 countries. She helps people see their strengths, trust their resilience, bridge difficult divides, and lean in to build a brighter future together. Her journey shows us the power of overcoming what it means to be the author of your story. I am so honored to have her here with me today. Welcome to the show, Celeste.
So happy to be with you.
So I'm really excited about the way this story ends, but in order for us to be excited about that, we do have to go back to the beginning. And that's where I want to start. I want to start with the beginning of your life, your childhood. Let's just go back there to your childhood and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born and what childhood looked like.
I was born in Oklahoma, and a little town called Salina is where we lived. I was born in Pryor, and it was not the only place I lived. We moved 32 times before I was 13 years old.
Wow.
So you could almost say all over the West Coast and as east as Oklahoma. And it wasn't that we were in the military. My stepfather always just thought for sure the next community would appreciate him more. He would be paid more. It would be better. There was greener grass somewhere else. So
Yeah.
we were often on the road.
And how many siblings do you have?
I actually have 5, and
Wow.
4 are living. And the rest that are, my brother passed when he was 10 and of leukemia, and my sisters they live in various parts of the U.S.
Where do you fall in line of the 5? Oldest, youngest?
I'm the oldest.
Wow. Okay. So oldest of 5 children. You mentioned your stepfather. So is this your stepfather? You were the
Yes.
first child, or was it your father or your stepfather at the time?
Oh, now we're getting to the whole sordid story. So I was actually, I'm actually the child of my mother's childhood sweetheart.
Okay.
And so when my stepfather graciously came along when I was 9 months old, he took me in to be with my mother, which is pretty wonderful. And I didn't know that I wasn't his child. So as more came along and I was treated differently, I wasn't sure why. It's funny,
Mm.
there's a photo of my beautiful sisters and and you could tell by looking at it, one of us is not like the others. But I I always would ask, how come I don't have freckles like they do? And my
Mm.
mom would say, well, you're just one big freckle.
Oh,
We were born of different fathers, and that did affect things for all of us. And it was, you don't realize when you're young things that are very difficult to turn into strengths for you, and you
hmm.
don't recognize patterns that you're seeing and why it happens. For me, it's been a really good example of don't take things personally. I couldn't
Mm.
figure out why my stepfather would treat me different. I couldn't figure out. I didn't have the why. But looking back, it makes a whole lot of sense. I wasn't his daughter.
Right.
And while that's unfortunate, it's also understandable. And the many ways that I took it personally, if I'd known the truth, I might not have. So
Mm.
it's really a
How
good
old were
example.
you when they told you?
Well, that's one of the best parts. They tried to tell me when I was 12, but it went terribly wrong because they were being cryptic. And
Uh,
and so I was like, wait, I don't understand. And they finally just gave up. I actually found out when things got really one of the most difficult times in my whole life. My sisters had just been abused by one of the stepbrothers, my stepfathers. I was at school. I just went through this horrific thing. And my stepfather, in order to not pay child support, decided to disown me legally. I got to be legally disowned. Who gets legally disowned? And my mother then introduced me to my biological father, who had the entire time been trying to reconnect with me. And the whole time, she would send little pictures from school and kind of a needle in his eye. You can't have her. You left
Mm.
us a long time ago. That was your decision, and you get to live with it. So I had no idea there was a family that wanted me and loved me. I had no idea that all this subtext was happening. And in the wake of just complete that time period when I really didn't think there was a reason to live and survive any longer, was the time I was about to be introduced to my biological father, who loved me very much.
Wow. So let's go backwards just a little bit because there are
Sure.
things that happened in your childhood that led to that kind of being the lowest time in your life. I know
Hmm.
that in looking into your story, there was a time when you guys were homeless and you were about 5 years old. Is that when
Hmm.
all of that started? Or tell me what led up to that, if you have what
Yeah.
memory you have of that time of your life.
For me, it was a bit of adventure at times, because we would stop at state parks and things. And one of the times that I thought of as the worst moment turned out to be a blessing, which I did not recognize that until like 6 or 7 years ago. And here's what happened. We were walking down, I was walking down a sidewalk in the state park, and a dog came up into my view, and it had a sparkly collar that went clear up to the owner's hand, and she had a half-eaten apple in her hand. And she threw this apple into a dumpster that was by us. And I'm staring at it, wondering if I could get in and still get back out without getting stuck. And then
Get in the
realized,
dumpster.
yes, climb into the dumpster and get this apple. It'd been a while since I'd eaten a fresh meal, and certainly since I'd had any fruit. And so I was contemplating that, and then had that feeling someone's staring at you. And sure enough, this woman's looking me up and down and says, "Where are your shoes, girl?" And
Mm.
I told her, "I'm toughening my feet." And I remember, because I used to play it through my mind over and over again, because I thought of her as Cruella de Vil, the
Mm.
villainess.
Mm-hmm.
And because the way she looked at me, it was like there was a mirror that turned around, and I could see that she thought of me as unkempt and small and dirty. And for a
Mm.
moment, I felt ashamed and poor. And then this warm assurance came over me. I am not from here. I am not what you see. And I wanted to tell her that, but she'd always already turned and walked away.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the truth that I see now. At such a young age, I got to be asked, "Are you the poor girl? Are you these circumstances, or are you something more?" And I got to answer, "No, I am not this." And what's beautiful about that is I didn't have complete understanding. I had to keep learning, and I had to keep surviving, and there were still challenging moments, but it gave me a mindset for watching the world and the evidence for none of us being our circumstances, and
Mm-hmm.
truly awareness that we are so capable of changing our circumstances, and that we all have something unique to offer this world. And that moment became such a gift.
So I know that you're able to sit here now and say that that was a gift and to have a smile on your face, but I
Mhm.
can't imagine that you felt that way in the moment.
No,
And if you did, like uh, from age 5, how long were you guys homeless?
it was just sometimes. We were
Something you're
about
off and on.
12. Yes, when we were about 12, we were able to get a home. My father used the GI Bill to
Mm-hmm.
purchase a home, and so we were there for a while with hard walls and beds and all the things you would expect. And it was actually a beautiful home. And someone looking from the outside would never suspect that things were as rickety and unpredictable as they were on the inside. But we had stability for a few years.
Right. And then there came a time was your stepfather always abusive, or did this happen over time? Or because I know that that is also part of that childhood period of yours. So going from
Mhm.
5, being homeless, moving around a lot, and
Yeah.
then like when did all of that start to happen?
I think he was frustrated. Life um, can really wear on you. And he had 4 daughters at the time and then an adopted son. And we were, um, I can't speak to how often or when. I can tell you that it was a pretty constant thing. And I can also tell you that it wasn't the physical abuse that was most difficult for me. It was actually the verbal abuse. He would
Mm.
call names, call you stupid and ugly and ignorant, and those things I think are more scarring still. Those are tapes that you have to choose as you learn and develop to undo, to redo, to pay attention when it plays again and go, actually, no, I'm actually very intelligent and capable. And I think I know where that comes from, and I'm erasing that one.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I didn't have those skills, and my
No.
sisters didn't have those skills.
And so what was life like at that time? Did you I mean, did you have hope? Did you think I'll never get out of this? It'll never be any different? Like what was your thinking at that time?
I wanted to have hope. I'm a woman of faith, so I would pray that we would have hope, and I also would think how I could fix it. I had a newspaper route at age 12 and carried a huge route to try to help my family. I started roofing at age 14 because I could make good money doing that.
Mhm.
I did everything I could to try to help, and thought that there could be a way, that there could be a way to reset and make a safe place once before we got a home, and then after it was lost again to us. And I always hoped, which is why that moment when I was at college and had this news my sisters had been hurt, felt so like there is no hope. My hope was education. My hope was coming back with great employment. My hope was, and 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 having to drop out, having to give up, was, it honestly felt like no one had ever loved me, that there was no hope for being supported or loved, and that my one way of supporting them was now gone. And why should I go on? It was, um, there was never stability. It felt like walking through, um, what, a haunted house with swirling rickety boards that you had to jump from one to the next, because we literally didn't know from one day to the next which parent would be showing up, which experience would be showing up, and whether we would be moving on.
Yeah. So what was high school like for you? Because you just mentioned that you went to college, and for someone that's grown up in such an unstable environment like you had, I would think that college probably felt like, I mean, did it always seem possible? Or, what was high school like for you as you're going through these really hard times and trying to decide what your future is going to look like?
Really difficult because I moved a lot. So it
Mhm.
is hard to keep up when you're in chemistry and now you're in a different kind of chemistry and they're in a different place, and now they don't offer a class you were almost done with, and now will you get the credit or will you not get the credit? And not only that, but switching all the time, so you're meeting new people. Will you have friends? Will
Mhm.
you not have friends? And so very difficult. Did teach me to be able to assess culture quickly because I could read the room, having had to shift over and over. But it was very difficult. And I have the gift of being someone who loves to read, loves to learn
Mm.
to this day. Every day, I want to learn something new, and I can read very quickly. So I was able to assimilate quickly, pick up as well as I could. But if imagine if I didn't have an earthquake under my feet all the time as I ran. Um, and so it was very difficult. I also tended to choose places that women didn't typically choose back then. I was roofing houses, not babysitting. I was doing sheet metal. I
Wow.
lift up my helmet and they looked like they were going to pass out, that who was under the helmet
Wow.
visor. And then I showed up in electrical engineering because I love math and science. So I was like, and
Mm,
they're like, so what are you doing in engineering? And
right.
I would answer, I love to learn. I love math and science. This is what my teachers recommended, and I'm here. When I started college, I tested out of every class I could in GE so I could dive in and go straight to the heaviest load I could possibly carry. And none of that was easy. Working
Yeah.
2 part-time jobs to try to keep myself there and to support myself other than the tuition that was thankfully covered. Um, no, it most definitely wasn't easy. And I had to do it without parental support at all.
Yeah. So take me to your lowest moment. Like when did you reach your lowest moment when you felt like I don't know if I can keep going on?
Hmm. That that was so imagine, and I hope this is okay and not hurtful to anyone. I'm just going to tell you what happened.
Mhm.
You can edit it out if you need to.
Yes.
Imagine that you have literally spent your life trying to protect your younger sisters from things that have happened to you. You have literally done everything you could to try to see ahead into rooms if there's danger there for them.
Mhm.
And then you leave for college hoping to bring support. And here's um, doing your best to carry it on and get through it as quickly as possible so you can bring the support they need and the stability they need. And then you get a call that the newest stepfather has abused several of them.
Mm.
And when I tried to talk to them to assure them I didn't have money to go get on a bus to get to them, and I was told by my mother, they will never speak to you again. They hate you. They
Mm.
don't want anything to do with you. This is your fault. If you didn't leave, this wouldn't have happened. If you didn't try to make peace every time fights started, you would have been gone a long time ago. This is your fault. And the
Wow.
thing about when you have something traumatic happen is the first thing we're most likely to believe is it's our fault.
Yeah.
And I think that's our brain trying to get some control of a thing we can't control. But I absolutely believed I see that. If I hadn't left, this wouldn't have happened. And I was devastated. And then I get a letter from stepfather number one who has disowned me. And then I get news that now I've not been in class for several weeks. I literally felt like I couldn't rise from the bed. I felt like the air was gray and thick and nothing was real anymore. I try to call them. I get hung up on again and told how this was all my fault. I felt like
Mm.
there was no door that would ever lead me to safety, that I tested them all
Yeah.
and there was none left. And I crumbled because I didn't even
Mm.
believe a God could love me because surely there was nothing in me worthy of any security or love.
Yeah.
And and honestly, in that moment, I did want to end my life. And then I realized just this tiny spark of no, hold on.
Yeah.
There will be a day. Hold on. I didn't hold on well. I dropped out. I I just got notice that I was going to go into being default as a student. I would lose my tuition.
Mm.
And I just, because I'd been home for 2 weeks, unable to get up.
Yeah.
And um, I dropped out and I walked away and I walked into a family home where everybody was a mush. My sister didn't even say welcome home because they were devastated too.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to try again. So my first solution was to apply to be in the Marines.
Mm. Okay.
And ironically, if you know what I do today, I work for menstrual equity and women's equity and community strength all over the world. So ironically, a period kept me from joining the Marines, but that's another story. And that's when my mother called my biological father and said, "You wanted her all these years. Do you want her now?
Wow.
She's a wreck."
Wow.
And imagine now I get to meet someone that's like the whole time someone wanted me,
Right.
and you're getting on the plane and you have I had very few things. I have my guitar and one little bag of clothes, and I'm getting off the plane to meet someone I did not know. I'm getting off the plane to hope these people will see me for who I really am, because I can barely breathe.
Yeah.
I can barely look people in the eye. And they welcomed me. And here's what I did next. With complete strangers, they allowed me to be in a room. They brought food to the door once in a while, but all I did was journal about the things that had happened to me and cry, pray, journal, cry, read scriptures, cry, journal, pray, and just pour it out
Mm.
until I finally came to recognitions that were impossible but important. Things like my family couldn't see me for who I was. They were jealous of who I
Yeah.
was, some of them, and that the things that had happened back to that original lesson when I was little do not define me, and I decide who I am.
Yeah.
And I walked out of that, brushed my hair, realized that the state I'd been in for weeks is exactly the state my parents would have loved, the ones that
Mm-hmm.
raised me would have loved,
Mm-hmm.
and left the room deciding that I was going to be me, and
Mm.
I was going to do that unapologetically.
Do you think, first of all, I can't imagine being in that place, being that low, and walking away from what you hoped would be the way out, meaning college, right? And then having to give
Mhm.
that up, going back. Do you think that part of the reason that your siblings turned on you, if you will, I don't know if that's the right language to use, was that because did they know you had a different father, and maybe they felt like you were different and you were different than them? Was there any of that?
No, I
No.
don't think so. Do you know what? You know how in the moment you can't see, at least it sometimes takes time to see clearly. And I think they saw me as their mother. I
Mm,
was the protector. I was the one that was there for them. I would run and consider, do you need something to eat? Do you need something? I was their mother. Our mother was mentally ill and
yeah.
really struggled and went through worse things than I in many ways. And her mind adapted the way it could so she could survive.
Mm,
And the truth is that they saw me as their mom. And so
mm,
in their mind as children, their mom left them
right.
and went into some place called college, whatever that is,
Right.
and then only showed up later after they'd been hurt. I understand that. It
Yeah.
didn't feel good. But thankfully, with time, we have a lot of love for each other. And actually the book that's come out just a month ago, The Power of Days, is my memoir and covers how Days for Girls grew and these experiences that taught me that we all matter, that conditions don't define us. And they're reading it helped them heal even more. So it's been an interesting journey.
When you are living with your biological father,
Hmm.
and like you said, you went through this period of journaling and studying scripture and praying and journaling and all the things.
Hmm.
What is the message what did you walk away from that with? What like you said, you come out of the room, right? Like, what are you thinking and feeling at that time?
I walked into that room just hoping to breathe through the days and hoping these people would tolerate me. I was really a relative stranger, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a miracle that they, let me process in that way. And as I walked out, I just, number one awareness that my parents could be jealous of me was like, what? Like,
Mm,
oh my goodness, is that even possible? And this made a lot of sense. And all the little pieces started going, this, I see. And that my impossible will not give upness was actually irritating to them, right?
right.
And as I
'Cause they want you
finished
to
that
be where
process,
they are. They want you to see where
yes,
they
like,
are.
what's
Mhm.
wrong with you? Why are
Yeah,
you acting like there's happiness possible?
yeah.
Why do you keep saying we could try something else? And
It
I have to
reminds
admit,
them
I
of their
do.
miserableness too, and makes them
Yep.
feel worse because they feel different than you.
I think you're right about that. But you don't see that. You don't go, they're just miserable because
No,
I do, you don't see that.
no.
And the truth is I left there going, I will not spend another day living someone else's hope for me. I
Mm,
will not do that. I don't care. I am going to do my best every day, and it's going to be authentic and me. And it's okay if I mess up. That's okay, because that's what life's for. And I probably will, but one thing I will not do is define myself as anything but doing the best I can and ready to live this life right now on my terms without someone else's definition.
why do you think that you came to that conclusion and they didn't?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess I honestly, it was kind of miraculous. It was
Yeah,
really an answer to the prayers. And I believe you have to ask in order to get answers.
yeah,
And so maybe it was the questions.
right.
Help me to see what I need to heal. Help me to understand what I really am and how I can show up and not feel defeated by this world.
Yeah,
And help me to understand this because I don't understand. I was always doing the best I could.
right.
So how come it was never enough?
Yeah,
Why am I not enough?
yeah,
And the answer was actually, you are.
yeah. There's this really good book that this conversation is reminding me of by a guy named Jamie Winship. The book, I think, is called Living Fearless. And he talks about asking God, what do I need to know in this situation? What do you want me to know? Like, what do
Yeah.
I need to learn? And he also asks, what do you call me? Asking God, like, what, when you talk about me, how do you describe me? What do you
Woo!
call me? Who would you say that I am? And I
Woohoo.
would tell you that most people have probably never asked God that question, and or they've never sat long enough to try to listen to hear what the answer is. And so you asking those questions um, is probably the difference between why you got that answer and had hope and were able to move forward and they were stuck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Questions are powerful and
Yeah.
listening is powerful.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
So you you're living with your dad. You
Yep.
kind of sounds like you have, I don't know if I want to use the word rebirth. I don't know if you would use that, but just kind of an awakening of
Yeah.
where you were and what could be your future. So what
Mhm.
what starts to happen next?
Well, actually, I met the love of my life. Now this is a true story, and here's the thing, I almost blew it. We've been married 41 years, and I'm
Wow.
like, I am not interested in meeting someone. I'm interested in breathing and figuring this out for
Mm.
myself. That's where I am right now, and not dating, not. And he was smart enough to not tell me that he felt truly inspired that he would and I would be married. And so, but he
Wow.
was smart enough not to tell me because I was like, now is not a good time. And so I really did have this person come into my life who is so unconditionally loving and from the beginning said, I
Mm.
see you.
Mm.
And I think
Powerful.
being seen, I think being seen is actually powerful in every part of our life. Another important moment was a teacher in sixth grade. So imagine you're transient, you don't have the right clothes, quote unquote, right clothes. You don't have your hair done every day. You don't. And I had this teacher, Dr. Peterson. This is a woman who had a doctorate, who was principal of our school and taught sixth grade.
No, it's
And
a
she
while
would,
ago. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And very uncommon
Right.
and amazing,
Yeah.
right? So check. Went to
Yeah.
college, check, right?
Right.
And also she would choose me over and over again. Could you lead the class in this exercise,
Mm.
please? Me? Me?
Mm.
Me and one other young man. Me again? Yes,
Right.
you please. And then putting art in front of her that I'd done and she'd go, "Oh, you are so talented. I see this and this. I'm going to mount this." And
Wow.
I have to tell you, I was obnoxious in that I tested her limits. I made another one and another one and another one and another one, and she never flinched. She'd go, "You have real gifts. I promise you, they were not real gift kind of things." But every time she would look me right in the eye and say, "I see so much
Yeah.
potential in you."
Yeah.
And it changes your life when someone sees you,
Yeah,
anyone at
it does.
any point. And we have the gift of offering each other that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that we often want to give others something that we wish we had, part of our, childhood or whatever. And mine was always wanting to feel wanted.
Mhm.
And so a big part of who I am now is always wanting like making sure other people feel seen and heard and like they matter and make them feel wanted. And so, when we have things in our childhood or in our life that happen like that, where someone sees you and you feel so invisible or you feel so unstable or out of control and living in chaos, it can literally change somebody's life. And that's probably one of those little nuggets that was able to help you keep going, right? Like, I
Absolutely.
see you, right? Like my life matters. And even though it was hard,
Mhm.
it's those little things that keep helping us keep going. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So you didn't go in the Marines.
No. And I got the gift of actually back to sheet metal and getting to know my family, my biological family, and getting to know my best friend who would go on to become my husband. And
Yeah.
then honestly having to choose to focus in on my family. We're getting a little more personal than I usually would, but it is in the book that I my mother came back
Mm,
and moved to where we were and said, I have my youngest siblings were there. And she said, I'm going to get a job. So you come and babysit for me. And so I can have this job. You come live with me. And the latest stepfather, another stepfather.
mm,
And I tried. I gave up everything like, okay, Don, I'm going to go be with them and take care
wow.
because this is my mom and my sisters and my brother. And and so imagine you're there and this guy shows up in I'm on a cot in the porch, a covered porch area, and he shows up at the edge of the cot in the middle of the night. I open my eyes and go, he's standing there staring at me. And so I spend the rest of the night, crouched in a corner, staying awake.
Yeah.
And then the next morning tell her what happens. And she says, oh, he would never do that. And
Mm,
so in that moment, I got the chance to finally, truly, absolutely, we're done. I know what I need to do.
yeah.
I called my now husband, fiance at the time, and said, I I need to leave. I need a
Yeah.
place to stay. I've got to go somewhere else because I can't be here. I'm not safe. And having anger that met with anger and just realizing today I'm choosing safe.
Yeah.
Today I'm choosing love. And today I'm choosing a future that doesn't include this. And I
Yeah.
wish I could take my brother and sister with me, but I can't. And I have to choose. And
Yeah.
today I'm choosing. And and those kinds of choices are really difficult but
Mhm.
also really important, or you can't go back and help. It's that whole oxygen for you
Yes.
first so that you
Yes.
can breathe long enough to dive in and help someone else.
Yeah. The topic of choice has come up in every single interview that I've done.
Mm,
At some point in time in every interview that I've done, someone says, I had to make a choice.
yeah.
And I think that it it's both simple and complicated, right? Like, just make
Mhm.
a choice. Like, it feels simple, but it's so hard to leave things that are comfortable for the unknown.
Yes.
And most people, I think, get to a point where choosing to stay in whatever situation they're in becomes more painful than choosing to go do something that is unknown and uncomfortable and unsure, but they just know that they have to do it. And, one of the things I'm hoping that people listening realize or hope that they don't do is wait till they get to the point where it's so bad that they are forced to choose and that they would choose sooner for
Mhm.
themselves before
Mhm.
they hit rock bottom. But unfortunately, that's when a lot of people make the choice.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think people sometimes don't feel safe to choose, and it's a pattern
Yeah.
they've been raised with or surrounded themselves with. And you're so right. It is in choosing that the pattern shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. You do have to make the choice no matter how hard it is, or it won't change. Yeah. So you get married.
Yes. And we have 6 children and
Wow.
foster children, and we're an exchange students, and ours ours becomes the home that children come to, right? And sometimes I remember one time there was a young man that showed up at breakfast 4 days in a row, and I said, "Are you moving in?" He goes, "Yeah, is that okay with you? You're gonna talk to your mom? We gotta talk to your mom." And he stayed with us for, I don't know, month and a half. And so it wasn't perfect. It was better than that. It was family and love and stability and again, not perfect, so
Right.
wonderful. And then came the day that I had a dream, actually, that just haunted me, and it made no sense that it haunted me, and it made no sense that I was in such shambles over something that was more symbolic than anything else. And and then I went to see a counselor, and she started asking me questions, and like session 2 or 3, all of a sudden, out of my mouth is spilling this thing that happened, and it was like I could suddenly it was like I was back in the room. It was
Mm,
like I could see the sun motes and dust motes and the smell, and it was like being back in the room, and I
mm,
wept so hard as this recollection came back to me. And what was interesting and meaningful and transformative for me was that when this experience was complete, I went into the restroom to wash my face and I look in the mirror and my upper lip was swollen. My left arm and chest were bruised, like speckled bruises, like,
mm,
a twisting rub.
mhm,
And I was like, what happened? I wasn't hitting myself. I wasn't, and I researched it and later talked to that counselor again. And this was our DNA holds memory,
yeah,
and
I've
our
heard that.
amazing body has the capacity in our brain to hide it away until you're stable enough, sure enough, ready
Mm,
enough to take it on. How amazing is that?
wow.
And 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 another level of healing, another
Yeah,
layer of healing could start. Is that to me is just miraculous.
yeah, that's amazing. That's I have heard that our DNA carries, like, holds on to our trauma. Our body holds on to our
Mhm,
trauma.
mhm.
Um, that's pretty incredible. I also don't
I
wanna lose.
hadn't heard that. Before that happened, I hadn't
Yeah,
heard that. So I
yeah.
was like, "What?"
I'm sure a lot of people listening haven't heard that. Talk a little bit more about that if you can, for people who are listening
Sure.
that might be like, I've never heard this before. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So our bodies and can hold on to memory and recollection in the same way that you hear of birds knowing where to go for seed that never visited it, their parents did, right? So it's that knowing your DNA is able to hold on to lessons and learnings to keep you safe, to
Mhm,
um, and so it actually is stored in your body. Some of the physical things we face and some of the things that we automatically do. Can I tell you, I used to be of not afraid, but if I was at a party and they offered soda, which most parties do
mhm,
offer soda, or I say no, 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 thank you, no, no, I don't like soda,
mm,
and and didn't know why. It just thought that was a thing for me. And then when I recalled this incident, there were soda bottles and empty ones as well in the corner of the room. And
mm.
suddenly it was like those 2 things went, I'm like, "Oh, that's what that is." And I
Wow.
didn't have reaction to soda again. So we really do have experiences that happen to us that we hold on to either subconsciously and often reacting to things we don't even know the why of, or physically, where we're literally allergic to something or experiencing a weak knee, and we don't even know why until the recollection returns. And this can actually be, by data, it is proven now, epidemic, what, epigen, oh man, the word just escaped me. I bet a lot of your listeners know. Epigenerational? Anyway, where you actually can experience this from another generation.
Passing it down through. I've heard that. Yes, that you can
Absolutely.
pass it
It's
down through
true.
the generations, like alcoholism
Yes.
can be
So
they
here's the
believe that's
good news.
passed down through the DNA.
And you don't want that, right? No, thank you. I don't want someone else's lessons in my experience. Here's the good news about that. That holds a rich opportunity for you to take care of your issues that happen, your trauma, your lessons that you're going through, so it doesn't get passed on. It's resolved within you. And that some of the things you're like, I just don't know why I can't break this cycle, sometimes have to do with something that you still get to release. Doesn't mean
Mm.
it has to be traumatic, but finding ways to deal with that is really, really important. So for me, becoming someone that has resources and tools and awareness about how to help release trauma
Mhm.
became another thing I was in pursuit of learning about, because the faster we can heal, the faster everyone around us gets to be more well too.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind is there a specific kind of counseling or therapy that is most helpful for people to release that from their bodies, from their DNA?
Oh, there are a lot of them. One of them that is really non-invasive and easy is called emotional freedom technique, EFT. And this looks like it wouldn't be that helpful. You may have heard of it. It's also called tapping. So
Mhm.
tapping is tapped along the meridian energy lines in your body
Mhm.
as you go through a script, and just helps your body start releasing. And you don't even have to know the why or the background. It's just the symptom you're feeling, the emotion you're feeling, you can release it. There's also, related to this, body code and emotion code, and these can really be effective. I personally have a tool, if you'd like, that I would love to share.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this
That's
is
great.
really simple.
Mhm.
I call it mind the gap. And it has to do with complete awareness that we all now know that between the moment that something happens to us and the moment that we respond, there's a split second that it's interpreted. And most often it's interpreted to a negative bias because we have a first responder in our brain called the amygdala.
Mm.
And this first responder is all about keeping us safe, all about saving energy from our brain to work on more important puzzles. However, with that negative bias, it means a lot of things that we've gone through have been perhaps interpreted in a way that we would not interpret intentionally. For
Mm.
instance, let's say you and I are both at the grocery store. You wave to me and I don't see you, so I don't respond. And then you're
Mhm.
like, she's mad at me
She
because,
ignored
and our
me.
brain does
Mhm.
exactly, right?
Mhm.
This whole little lizard trail that happens, and then we waste our energy. I had this happen just the other day. I was ran into someone who said, "I've read your book. I'm halfway through your book," and then she didn't say anything more, smiled and walked off. And I'm like, "Oh, you know that whole thing. If you don't have something good to say, don't
Don't
say
say anything
anything
at
at
all.
all."
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh my word, she hates my book," right?
Mm.
And then, but I also recognize, first of all, it's none of my business what she thinks of me.
Mm.
Incredible book called The Four Agreements. It's short
Mhm.
and
I've heard
powerful.
of it.
Highly recommend it. Reminds us that what people think of us is really none of our business. And then recognizing I have a choice right now. I can be curious and interested and grateful, or I can go into lizard mode and be upset for the
Mm.
next few hours. Which do I want? Well, first
Right.
of all, I really like her. So I'm going to choose creative and curious and grateful. So I'm really grateful she got the book. That was so nice of her to let me know. And then went back to what I was doing. Take a deep breath. Whenever you're frustrated, anxious, deep breath is huge. So deep breath, and then kept going. So like 6 hours later, I run into her again. She
Mm.
turns to the person next to her and says, "Mary, this is the woman I was telling you about that I love her book. This is Celeste." 6 hours
Right.
I could have wasted on lizard trails.
And you got the opportunity 6 hours later. Some people might not have seen that person again for days or weeks or months and held on to it even
Absolutely.
longer.
Absolutely.
A lot of
So
us do
here's
that. Mm-hmm.
it, I think we all do. And so we don't have to kick ourselves because this is how we're made.
Yeah.
It's how your brain's made to go to default to negative. So the gift in this recognition is that you can go to any moment, take a deep breath, make a new choice about how you intentionally want to interpret it. Or you can go to a moment in the past, reopen it, try to pick up as many specifics in the scene, even feel the feelings, and then bring gratitude. What am I grateful for here? And that may be really hard because it's a
Mm-hmm.
really bad thing. And then what wisdom can I bring from now? So I was attacked when I was 7. So I can bring to that moment. I can't pretend it didn't happen. I
Right.
can't like brush over it like everything's great. It wasn't great. I
Yeah.
can go back, open it up and say, actually, I am so proud of you for surviving.
Mm.
That was really hard. And you walked out of that room somehow.
Yeah.
And I just wanted you to know that I love you, that there will come a day when the strengths you walked away from will help you reach millions of people. And I just want you to know you are loved and you may feel very alone right now, but I am here and I see you
Yeah.
and I love you. And I'm so proud of you and I am rooting for you from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can take our energy back, reframe the moments, and get our understanding of how we want to interpret it.
I think that that's going to be incredibly powerful for people who are listening, because when things happen that feel out of our control, or especially when we were children that we feel like we had no power, we were powerless, we had no control over, those often hang with us lifelong in a very negative way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it affects the way you view relationships or show up in relationships. It can affect trust. It can affect so many things. And people will say, like, well, I can't go back and change it, right? You can't undo it. But the example that you just gave, I feel like gives you your power back to go back to that time and
Yes.
see that little girl, little boy from a different perspective. And like you said, what happened to you or the person listening can't change that, but you going back and acknowledging it and saying, I see you and you were strong and all of the things like that, that to me feels life changing. That feels empowering. That feels
Mm-hmm.
like that didn't happen to me for nothing. Like that,
Yes.
I'm stuck with that for life. Like you are taking that incident, whatever that tragedy, the whatever happened, and saying, I'm no longer going to allow you to have negative impact in my life now, control, taking away my power. I'm actually going to use this for good. And that's a big deal.
100%.
It's a big deal. That's huge.
It works.
Yeah. Wow. So I know you have an organization that you started called Days for Girls. Take me from, you got married, you had kids. I just think that it's so beautiful that you turned your home into a place that was so safe for children that they couldn't wait to come and be loved on and be in a great environment. And you took so many children in. Clearly, a lot of that probably stemmed from your own childhood of you wanting these kids to have a different experience than you did. And so how does that progress into the organization that you started?
It progressed because a door slammed really hard. And it
Mm.
was a door that I kind of, really was upset about. And that's another evidence that we can just trust that there are seasons and things happen. So here's what happened. I had always loved writing. I went back to school when I was 47 and got a master's degree in creative writing and literature, and then founded a writers conference. So here I am, a mom, and and have a huge family and a writers conference that I do annually that became, widely acclaimed, called the Whidbey Island Writers Conference. And suddenly, years later, 7 years later, it feels like I'm supposed to stop. And my first response is,
Mm.
no, I love this. Why would I stop? This is like the best. I am one of the luckiest people in the world. I get to interact with creative individuals and help others step into their creativity. I love what I'm doing and be a mom. This is like heaven.
Yeah.
But soon contention broke out and it became very clear I don't do contention. I choose that's not my place to stay. And so
Hmm.
so I walked away feeling like, why? Why did this happen to me? This is so terrible. Can't you change it? Isn't there something I could do? I'm really bemoaning this.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, a dear friend, Andy Clay, invited me to go with her to her but just being built school in Africa, in Kenya. And I would not have been able to go with her. So I'm bringing sustainable solutions with her and to this school as we build it, because I know that solutions you can count on are the ones you need when you don't want someone to bring the next handout. You need solutions you can count on.
Yeah.
So those were the kind of solutions we were building together. So imagine, fast forward, introduced an orphanage, and post-election violence broke out in Kenya, a relatively stable country, just 500,000 people displaced because of an election people didn't
Mm.
believe the results for. So
Wow.
now an orphanage I've been helping went from 420 kids to over 1,400 kids, which is impossible if you saw
Yeah.
the space. And then one night I get a call that they are completely out of food, and they have been for 2 days.
Oh gosh.
Now, you know that I know what that's like.
Yep.
And I know how you can't even think clearly or concentrate on things, and how you can't even sleep well because the hunger wakes you up.
Yeah.
So I mean, I
Mm.
just hit my knees. Please tell me what to do. I will do anything, but I have no more resources. We've already sent them all. We'd had car washes and golf classics. We have nothing more to send. And nothing came to me. And imagine waking up at 2:30 in the morning with it going through your head. Have you asked what the girls are doing for feminine hygiene? I
Hmm.
gasped. I ran to the computer to email to ask, and they answered immediately. Didn't expect that. Smartphones weren't everywhere in 2008. And the answer was nothing. They wait in their rooms. It turned out they would sit on pieces of cardboard for days.
Wow.
I
That's
was able to raise
devastating.
funds. I know it and it was so devastating that it didn't even occur to me that that wasn't the answer to what I was asking. However, we were able to raise money for food and other things they needed and disposable pads. But I knew what happens next month. If you're
Right.
choosing between food and pads, food wins.
Right.
So
And this
how do
isn't a
they have something?
one-time thing, just like food. This is a ongoing need every single month.
Absolutely. So how do you make a solution you can count on? And the great news is volunteers mustered. I did a design. Everybody got together, and amazingly 500 washable menstrual kits that are soft. And wasn't a great design, and I can say that I designed it, but we listened. And when we got there with the first kits, 8 enormous green duffel bags, and the girls come in, and 250 girls at a time, and they've just received their kits and talked about what periods are, because mystically we're all afraid to talk about that, and they were
Mhm.
facing huge difficulty because of not talking and understanding it. And
Mhm.
so they're all cheering still, and the first 10 group of 10 girls comes to the door, and they say, thank you so much, because before you came, we had to let them use us if we wanted to leave the room and go to class. And I'm just praying that doesn't mean what I think it
Oh
means.
gosh.
And it turned out they were being sexually exploited in exchange for a single disposable pad.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the moment Days for Girls was born.
Yeah. I can't even wrap my head around that. I mean, that's crazy. That's
It
heartbreaking.
is crazy. And it's crazy that our silence about something that's basic and biological and connects all of us. None of us got here without a period happening.
Right.
Even test tube babies. The truth is that our fear has kept that for many, many eons from being something addressed. And here's
Mm.
the amazing good news. that this is something we can change in our lifetime. And because I have engineering in my background, if this, then that,
Mm-hmm.
because I have sewing in my background, because I had sustainable solutions and even poverty in my background, I knew it had to be something they could count on. And I knew to listen. And they taught us what designs would work. And today, Days for Girls holds 2 patents for the design's genius, built by user feedback. And we have now reached over 3.1 million women and girls in 145 countries on 6 continents, raising awareness and advocacy and education. And yes, menstrual solutions for millions all over the world and counting.
Okay, so I can't help, while you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, you were running a writing conference that you loved, that was a dream come true.
Yes.
And that had to end and be, quote unquote, taken away in
Mm-hmm.
order for you to have this opportunity to go to Kenya. Because, like you said, you wouldn't have gone
No.
if you were still doing the conference. And so there are tons of people listening right now who have something they loved that was going well, that was great in their life, that was taken away. And they either don't understand, or they're angry, or they're bitter, or they're whatever. And that had to happen in order for you to go to Kenya. And in order for you to go to Kenya, or in order for you to create what you created today and help millions of women and children girls that you have helped, you had to go on that Kenya trip. And I
Isn't that
also
amazing?
just have to point out that, like you just said, every single thing that you experienced in your life, from your childhood, from poverty to being dismissed by family members as unimportant, as being different than the others,
Mm-hmm.
of being rejected, all of the things you went through your entire life made you the exact perfect person to resolve this problem for millions and millions of people around the world.
Absolutely.
If that isn't
Isn't
a
that
beautiful story, if
amazing?
I've ever heard one. And what I believe is that isn't just true for you. That is true for every single one of us. That everything that happened in our life, we can choose to look at it and hold on to bitterness and resentment and wish it was different. Or we can choose to see that it all had to happen for a very specific purpose and reason, and has to do with why we're on this earth. And maybe you haven't found that yet, but maybe it's because you're still looking at things from the past in the wrong way. Yeah.
Isn't that miraculous? And it's just true. And here's the mind-boggling thing that I believe, and I wish I could have a megaphone to tell the entire world. Our weaknesses that we shame ourselves for are actually a part of our beautiful strength.
Yeah.
And if we did not have them, we wouldn't lean in where we do. We wouldn't be curious where we are. And we wouldn't have empathy for others in the very way someone else may need us, or we need to show up from that place of understanding.
Yeah.
We shame ourselves because of who we are. We other ourselves. We think we're not worthy because of these things that have happened or are part of us or we struggle with, when in truth, it all is the perfect package for the walk that you can have if we can just stop shaming and othering and should-having ourselves.
Yeah.
It is miraculous what happens when we let go of all of that.
Yeah. It's really like you said, if we never had any weaknesses, if we never had any struggles, we wouldn't ever be looking for solutions. We wouldn't be able to empathize with the people that need the solutions. And so I'm so glad that you brought this up, because I myself have struggled with shame in the past around even decisions I might have made, or circumstances I might have put myself in because of my own choices, right? It's one thing when you're carrying shame of something that happened to you that you couldn't control. But I think there's also this other shame that happens when you're like, well, I did this to myself, right?
For sure.
And
Yeah.
I even believe that shame is part of the learning process. Some of it is self-inflicted and some of it is others inflicted, but none of it is meant to keep us down. It really is meant for something bigger.
I'm so glad you said that because it's true. I dropped out. I have some capacity in intellect and and remembering, and I dropped out.
Yeah.
Like I just tanked.
Yeah.
And I drug that shame along for a long time. And that was a choice I made. Really. And you're just so right. None of it, even the things that are self-inflicted, have to be our identity. We can choose the gift and drop the rest and go create more.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I want to end by asking you, what is a message that you want everybody to walk away from with this? But I feel like we just did that. I feel like we just spent the last 10 minutes or so this entire episode doing that. Is there anything else? I mean, I feel like what you just said is the perfect ending, but is there anything else, any message that you want our listeners to walk away from at the end of this?
If you'd like, I would love to share that in 2010, I had a series of seizures that went on long enough that they called life flight they canceled it because they finally stopped, but it left me with the equivalent of a stroke. I would blink. If I blinked, I would fall to the left when I walked. I was unable to read anymore. I was unable to speak very clearly at times, and I was unable to trust my brain not to go into another round of seizures. That was 2010. Days for Girls started in 2008.
Wow.
I thought that everything was over for me. I thought, and I honestly had to come to the place where I went, well, I have read thousands of books. I have done amazing things. I have an amazing family. Maybe it's enough. Maybe that's why I ran so fast all these years. Maybe that was enough. And I had to let go and trust, and only then got keys to start healing. And I just want to point out that that was the girl that could not read, finished a book that became #1 Amazon new release 2 days after release, and #1 Amazon audio 5 days after being released, and a whole book.
Yeah.
And I thought it was over and over again. When I thought it was over, it was actually the beginning of a powerful new season that left me the gift of knowing for sure that I didn't think I would have to think I was all that, or think the awards and that define me. Not even those things define me, because we're all walking a miracle.
Yeah.
And everything's possible. I have a whole book to prove it.
Yeah. So tell everybody where they can learn more about Days for Girls, where they can learn more about your book, any of the other things you have going on, because I know I can't get enough of what you're saying, and I know that our listeners are going to want more too. So tell us all about that.
You can find more about Days for Girls at daysforgirls.org, giving back days of their lives. And you can find out more about the book at thepowerofdays.com, and more about me, and connect with me anywhere on social media, Celeste Mergens. I'm really excited what people think about the books. If you have any questions about what we talked about, I'm here, just a message away.
Awesome. Well, Celeste, I'm excited for this episode because I know how many lives are going to be changed by it. And I just thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story with us.
It's been a delight.